Well, hopefully you're joining us today. It's Friday afternoon, March 20th. We're thankful that you're hopefully joining us online through this Facebook Live. We wanted to take a few moments to talk to you a little bit about the city of Maricopa, where things are, where we're going. I'm here today with members of the City Council. We have Councilmember Vidiello, Councilmember Wade, Vice Mayor Smith, and Councilmember Manfredi, Councilwoman Gussie, and Councilmember Brown were unable to join us, but we did have conversations with them. I wanted to talk to you a little bit today about where we are, where we've come from, and where we're going here as a city. So as it relates to this coronavirus. So clearly there is a lot of misinformation out there, and there's a lot of fear and a lot of people thinking a lot of different things. The first thing I want to say is that we hear you. We understand this. We're living it too. We're living it with our own families, and we know how difficult this is. But that being said, I think it's also a perfect opportunity and time for us to find calm, peace, and actually enjoyment out of the fact that we get to spend some time with family, we get to slow down our lives a little bit, and ultimately we get to rethink what's really important in our lives. But probably most importantly is that we need to approach things with a level head and calm and balanced ways of thinking through things with sound medical advice and a logical practice. And so that's what I want to talk to you a little bit about today. So first, about 7 days ago, we saw the coronavirus start to hit in Arizona in a way that it hadn't been up to this point. And because of this, it's changed everything. Businesses are having to change. Airlines are shutting down. All of us are under orders to do our best to make sure that we are following the recommendations and the guidelines from the CDC, the Arizona Department of Health Services, as well as our county departments, and then ultimately our local officials. And the reason for this is that the CDC gives broad-based recommendations that affect the entire country. And from those recommendations, those epidemiologists, those doctors, etc., that then filters down to the Department of State Health Departments. And those are then dealt with on a state level. And each state is facing this in a different fashion. I think we can clearly see that some states like California and New York or even Washington are far more advanced in this, and other states like Arizona that are just being hit here recently. Now, again, with some of the misinformation out there and the reasons why things are being done the way they're being done. When this started to happen, the city of Maricopa has been planning for and preparing for some time. We have a emergency operations center that we can activate in a moment's notice. And we also have preparations that we have been planning for some time on what to do when this started to hit our area. And in this process, one of the things you can't know is how the actual recommendations will come down and affect you in that very moment. And so one of those things that we've been dealing with is, what does this look like on the ground for Maricopa? So again, to where we've been, one of the things we did immediately within the first few days is we immediately scaled back. We followed the recommendations of the CDC and we scaled back the things that needed to be done. So for example, Copper Sky, classes were canceled, programming was canceled. Anything where groups over 10 people would be congregated or in a given area, they were reduced or eliminated. The same happened for the library, for City Hall, and all public buildings in Maricopa. With that has come a little bit of confusion. A lot of people believe that everything should be shut down entirely, and I understand that, and we understand that. The city understands that. But there is a reason and rationale by which we have not done that. First and foremost is that we have looked at a way to say we have to balance a variety of opinions out there. I have people that contact me every day that say that we should shut everything down and everybody should be locked down in their home. I also have people that contact me every day and say, why are we doing this? This isn't here. There's no reason for this. This is government overreach. So when we as elected leaders fall in the middle of that, we certainly want to do the right thing. We want to do something that is best for everybody. Our job is to protect the 55,000 people that live here in the city of Maricopa. So how do we do that? One of the things that we do is we outreach and we search for other entities that can give us valuable medical advice. And so every day since the start of this, I have been in contact with not only the CDC and the Arizona Department of Health Services, been in contact with the governor's office, been in contact with Pinal County Health Department, and in contact with my own staff and my council members. And in this process, we have been advising one another and counseling one another so that we can make the best possible recommendation based on the scenario on the ground as it pertains to the overarching recommendations from the CDC and the Arizona State Department of Health. As we do this, we have followed every one of these recommendations to the T. Now, some of you may feel that it's not gone far enough, and that's okay. We understand that. We hear you. We also understand that others feel that it's gone too far, and that's okay too. We are absolutely doing our best to find that middle ground by which we're not putting business owners completely out. There are so many people in this city that have invested their life savings, and now through no fault of their own, they find themselves in a complete dilapidation because the economy around them is crumbling. They are being forced into stopping their business, whether you're a large business, medium, or small business. And this is a real challenge for them. And this is just the beginning. There are perhaps more weeks ahead where this type of closures are going to be instituted. And if that's the case, then it's really going to be hard for a lot of people to survive. We've also seen people in the hotel industry almost eviscerated. We've seen hotels close down. The tourism industry has stopped. We see lots and lots of problems. And with that comes more and more people not being able to pay their bills, not being able to put food on their table. So as Maricopa, we have decided at this time that we would go as long as we could to follow those recommendations. And again, those recommendations were very specific. And I think it's important we outlay those here. Regardless of what you've seen in other cities and what you've heard from other folks, there is a reason that cities are different in each place you go. They have different sets of codes, and they're done that way on purpose. Let me give you an example. In discussing states of emergency, the city of Gilbert came out almost immediately and declared a state of emergency. And the reason they did this was because in their city code, it defines and states that if they are to follow the CDC recommendations, they need to be able to close municipal buildings, limit working from home, or limit working in the building and do more working from home, and to keep that space. In order to do that, they can only do it by having a state of emergency in place. Other cities didn't need that, such as the city of Maricopa. We could do that without having to declare a state of emergency, and we could follow the recommendations as were given. Now, it's really important that we discuss how those recommendations came down. Those recommendations came in such a fashion where they looked at the entire country and they tried to find that balance as well, giving local authorities the ability to take the situation on the ground where they're located and make the decisions necessary to help protect their folks as best as possible. In doing so, we found that just 2 days ago that there had been recommendations that for restaurants were to do their best to close. But if they could not close, or they chose not to close, because there was no mandate, there was simply a recommendation, and that in so doing, that they could then provide for one of two other things. They could provide for curbside delivery or pickup, takeout, for example, or they could continue to stay open, but they had to do things and put into place protocols and examples of social distancing. They had to provide that for not only their employees, but also their public parishioners or clientele. They also had to make sure that they were exceeding their wipe downs, that they were going down and disinfecting everything, and that they were taking that next level of doing this. Here comes the new challenge, though, is that last night we moved from recommendations to mandates. And so we have now gone to a position where the city can no longer take its time in evaluating things when and how they're happening. We have to be much more fluid and much more nimble and apt to be able to respond. When you move to mandates, we have to be able to coincide with those. And so yesterday, Governor Ducey, in his executive order, basically said, from a statewide perspective, here's the new compromise. If you are residing in a county that has confirmed cases of coronavirus, then if you own a restaurant, it has to be shut, a cafeteria, a dine-in establishment. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't be open to the public from the standpoint that you can take out food. You can, but you have to provide curbside. There's no more dine-in service available. For counties outside of that, the original recommendations still stand from the CDC and from the Arizona Department of Health Services. And because of that, those other counties may still continue to have dine-in until they have a confirmed case. Now, again, the amount of ideas and philosophies out there are many, but I want to take a moment and explain to you kind of how and why we have taken this approach up to this point. So, may I? I'm going to give to you a little bit. I'm going to read this to you, and I'll be happy to put it out there on our website. Yesterday, I participated in a conference call with the Maricopa County Department of Health Services. And in that, one of the things that we learned was a presentation given by them to the largest county in all of Arizona, at least the most populous, and also the one that has the most confirmed coronavirus cases. And I think you'll find some things interesting. I'm going to read 3 slides to you. The first one is titled, "What is the overall, or the public health strategy overall?" First one says, "It's critical to maintain for the long haul isolation of all sick individuals regardless of COVID-19 testing, investigate cases for close contacts, quarantine household contacts, notify other close contacts so they can watch for symptoms. High-risk individuals over 60 or chronic medical conditions must avoid sick people and groups over 10, and monitor all healthcare workers daily for fever and symptoms." So that's one of the things they're doing, and I think those recommendations also echo in many other places, including here. But the next slide is something that's pretty interesting. It says, "This is a marathon, not a sprint." Now, why is that? Let's take a look. It says, "We need to maintain the minimum social distancing strategies until we get a vaccine, which they anticipate is about 1 year out. Additional strategies like teleworking, canceling mass gatherings, and limiting dine-in should be added during periods of high spread. Closing bars, restaurants, and sheltering at home is effective, but it is not sustainable long-term and should be delayed." Now that's interesting. The next slide goes in to explain that a little bit more, and it says, "Why not shut everything down?" Science and published science from other countries says that shutting everything down too early will only work temporarily. Disease will be reintroduced when social distancing is relaxed, and the spread will ramp back up. There is a critical time when you can implement maximum social distancing, and it will stop the outbreak. But it requires enough of the population to be immune from previous infection so it won't spread. It also allows you to do it for a short time so it doesn't severely impact all of the economy and the economic conditions in which we live. You could do short periods of max social distancing to reduce stress on the healthcare system, like full ICUs. Now, when you understand that and you take that into its true understanding from a medical condition, it puts you back in our position. And what we find ourselves is doing our best to follow all the recommendations of the CDC in limiting and creating social distancing, washing hands, striking out some of these large events, etc. But it also meant that we're trying to find a balance. Now, again, like I said just a few moments ago, the time has come for the city of Maricopa to declare its own state of emergency. And there's a reason for that. Yeah. Thank you. So today, with advice and consulting of my council members, we have issued the City of Maricopa's own state of emergency proclamation. This will be posted online for each of you to read and to inspect. In so doing, the reason we're doing this is because, as I said earlier, we've reached a time by which we have crossed from pure recommendation into mandate. And because of those mandates, we need to be able to align the recommendations of the City of Maricopa and to do it in a fast and orderly fashion. However, I also want you to understand that this is not a power and an action that we take lightly as a council. I firmly believe that the city as a government, counties as a government, states, and the federal government as a whole all have a concept of the framers of our Constitution. And one of the things that they believed in heavily was that there should be balance, that there should be transparency, and that there should be checks and balances. And in these checks and balances, that governments are set up so that no one place has too much power, too much authority. And so the challenge that I find with states of emergency is it grants a lot of that to now be done by mayoral proclamation. And so while that's a heavy burden that we carry, that I carry, and that we carry as a group, it's one of the things that I feel that not only has to be returned to the people as quickly as possible, but it also needs to be taken from the people in its most likely fashion. And so that's why we've waited till today to do this. When I last checked the website at the Arizona League of Cities and Towns, there were still about under half of all 91 cities and towns in this state that have declared a state of emergency. And it's for all different reasons. Some have to do it quickly, some decided to do it so they can take larger steps beyond what the recommendations from the state and the CDC were. Others have decided that they were going to do it only because they needed to, they had to, or in our case where it comes in and helps bring things in line. So that's where we are today. So what does that mean for tomorrow? Well, things are going to change a little bit here in Maricopa, as we just talked about. We know that according to the rules and regulations that as of today, close of business, that restaurants need to be shuttered unless, of course, they are doing some sort of a dine-in fashion where you can't, I apologize, where you're not doing dine-in, but take-out, exactly. We're doing curbside pickup. That is what you can do. Now, I've had people ask, what does that mean? Does that mean close of my business? I mean 5 p.m.? What does that mean? Well, I was on the call with the governor today, and the governor reiterated the fact that what it means is that until tomorrow, Saturday, once we reach Saturday, that the way they're doing business today can no longer be in effect. So as of tomorrow, things have to be different. Okay? That's what it means going forward. People also have asked, well, how long is that for? Well, that's until the determination of the governor, the CDC, the medical professionals, and then ultimately we rescind that order as well here in the city of Maricopa. We have lots of questions about other businesses. I've had lots of businesses call me and say, I'm a salon, I'm a bank, I'm a something else. What does that mean for me? And I asked those questions directly of the governor today, and the answer I got was specifically, if it has not been singled out in the organization or the proclamation that he has thus given, then those businesses may continue doing business as usual, assuming the protocols of the CDC and the state health department. Again, meaning the social distancing, meaning washing of one's hands, checking for symptoms, sending people home if they're sick, telecommuting, etc. Those are the overreaching and overarching goals and ideas by which we are trying to live our daily lives at this time. We know that the goal being to not only reduce the spread, but flatten the curve. That's the idea. So, what does that mean for Maricopa? Well, indeed, we will be closing Copper Sky and the library, even City Hall. But at the same time, we are trying to find ways by which we can be creative. Let me give you an example. When we close the library here, we want to continue to add services in a way, not just take away services, but add services in a way that you perhaps didn't think of. If any of you have ever been to our library, you know that we do family reading time or children's reading time. We have a gentleman that comes in and he reads to these kids and they love it. My own kids have gone many times. But it's hard now when we have these rules and regulations that say we can't do that. So one of the things that we'll be doing is we'll be going in a full-on onslaught to a lot more digital and online way of reaching out to you and the services that you hope to expect. So, for example, we'll be recording each of these sessions that we'll be doing with 2 or 3 people, and then from there, we'll be putting it out on a broadcast so that your kids in the comfort of your home can still have that sort of entertainment from this gentleman who's used to doing it. Again, the kids love it. So we will also be doing a curbside pickup. Just like the recommendations for dining establishments, we will be having a curbside pickup where you can order your books or your movies. They will be sanitized and handed off just in any other way that we would do to protect things. But you can pull up to a curbside and one of our employees will come out and make those exchanges with you. Okay? The other thing we're doing at City Hall is the same thing. If you need a passport application or some other interaction with us, we encourage you to call. We will have a limited staff here, but most of our folks will be working from home. They will also be getting paid, just like most of the places out there are trying to do the same, at least in the short term. And we will also have a concierge service where folks come out to your car, pick up that passport application, and get it processed for you. So again, we encourage you to call before coming, but even if you're in the parking lot, you can let us know you're there. We'll come out and meet you. Okay? Copper Sky, same thing. The parks will remain open, but the facility itself will be closed until further notice. We don't anticipate it being a long period of time, but again, this is a fluid situation changing on a daily basis. And so we want to make sure that we are doing our best to stay in tune with what the advice is, and so it'll remain closed as long as it needs to be. But what we want to do is we want to create some way for families in their own groups to be able to still have and utilize the services that we typically provide. So we'll be creating kiosks, outdoor kiosks, staffed by our staff, by which you can call in, make a reservation online. You can show up to Pecana Park or Copper Sky, and you can check out a basketball, for example, or a volleyball. And so therefore you can still go to the parks, but we completely discourage any groups above 10. We are going to continue to follow those guidelines as it has been portrayed. And so these are some of the things that we're trying to do to stand out just a little bit. And finally, I want to talk about our Comet service, our little bus service. We are reducing that to a dial-a-ride only. It will not be running on its regular route. And so if you have a place where you need to go to get medical attention, the grocery store, food bank, something along those lines, then you can call us up and we'll be sure to show up to your house, pick you up, and take you where you need to go. Again, with all the disinfecting, with all of the limitations on the amount of people, et cetera, et cetera. So we are doing our best to follow along with all of those. Again, we don't take this lightly. We take it very seriously. I literally, these guys can attest to it. I've been up at 4 in the morning every morning. I work until about midnight every night, if not longer. I've been doing everything I can to be in contact with every one of these individuals that can provide the appropriate and essential medical advice so that we can make the most educated decisions for this city. We are taking it very seriously. And again, we hear you. We live here. We're all on the same Facebook pages as you are. We are constantly doing everything we can to listen to your ideas. But we are trying to take those in the context of how do you satisfy both sides? How do we protect public safety? And so we are going to continue to follow the daily, if not hourly, medical advice that we get on a regular basis so that we can keep in play your safety and absolutely take Maricopa through this challenge. I want to leave you with this. We understand it's a scary time. We understand there's a lot of fear. But I also want to leave you with the fact that despite all this, we will come out of this. The sun will come up tomorrow. This too shall pass. And in the end, we have great things happening in this city. We have amazing things being built. We have schools coming out of the ground. We have new buildings and retail that want to come forth. And so we are going to continue moving forward with these things. I hope that this has helped answer some of your questions. I know that myself and council members will be out there in the public when and where we can and where appropriate to answer as many questions as we can. I'm sorry if there are times in which we disagree, but at the end of the day, we understand, we hear you, and we're doing our absolute best to make this priority number one. I hope that this shows this to you. So with that, we'll go ahead and close this out, and thank you very much for being with us today on this Facebook Live.